When I retired from 30 years of military engineering and bought a corner lot in the manicured Maplewood Estates, I had one vision in mind: tranquility. The kind of peace that seeps into your bones. I didn't want much. Just weekends with the scent of honeysuckle in the air, the burble of my koi pond, and maybe a soft jazz playlist drifting through open windows. What I got instead was Karen Lathrop. She came knocking the very day the moving truck pulled out of my driveway. Clipboard clutched like a gavel, lips pinched with purpose. "James Walker?" she asked, eyes darting to the flagpole I was anchoring in the flower bed. "Just a friendly reminder. Per HOA guidelines, flags must not exceed 10 feet above ground level. Yours is currently at 12. I blinked. "It's a flagpole, not a transmission tower." "Rules are rules," she said. And just like that, Karen became my unwelcome shadow. She didn't lead the HOA, she ruled it. Every neighborhood had its self-appointed tyrant, and Karen wore the title like a sash. With a voice that could slice drywall and a presence that suggested she'd never met a boundary she wouldn't cross, she policed lawns and flower beds like they were federal property. My offense list grew fast. Mailbox too modern, grass too wild, koi pond too reflective. I'd replace the thirsty Bermuda grass with native buffalo, better for the soil and water saving. To Karen, it was an abomination. "Prairie weeds," she sniffed. I fought back, always through the proper channels. Appeals, citations, letters. And I won. Every time. Still, Karen prowled past my yard like she was planning a siege. Then came the incident with the smart sprinklers. I'd installed them out of spite, top of the line, programmable by zone and pressure. If she wanted perfection, I'd give her a botanical masterpiece. The irony, of course, is that it was the beauty of that very lawn that triggered her most outrageous scheme. It began subtly, as all power plays do. A white event tent appeared across the street on a Friday afternoon. Folded chairs stacked in neat rows. A catering truck idled, pumping out tantalizing smells. Then came the sign: reserved parking for wedding guests only. It was taped to a folding stake jammed into my front grass. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. I'm not the neighborly type, but I wasn't opposed to people having a celebration. That changed when I noticed strangers walking onto my property, unfurling fabric, aligning floral arrangements, and hammering hooks into the edge of my koi pond deck. "Hey!" I barked, stepping out in sandals and a grilling apron. "Who authorized this?" A man with a headset, sweaty and distracted, waved vaguely toward Karen's house. "We were told this lot was secured for the ceremony. Starts tomorrow, noon sharp." "You the owner?" "Yes." "And I never gave permission." The man didn't even pause. "Take it up with the HOA. We just go where they tell us." I called Karen. No answer. I marched over. She wasn't home. Instead, I got her voicemail, oozing with condescension. "Hi, this is Karen. If this is about the wedding, relax. The board voted to allow it on the most aesthetically suitable lawn. We'll clean up after. Consider it an honor, James." I played it twice. An honor? She'd leased my yard for her niece's wedding, without consent, because it was aesthetically suitable. The next morning, the invasion began in full. White chairs, crystal archways, giant speakers, a harpist rehearsing scales. It looked like a luxury magazine shoot happening on my own lawn. I stood behind my curtain, coffee in hand, rage pulsing in my temples. Karen strolled by in a fuchsia suit, barking orders like a general prepping for battle. That's when I realized this wasn't just overreach. This was trespass wrapped in entitlement, served with a garnish of HOA tyranny. I set my mug down. Enough was enough. It was time to remind Karen, gently of course, that I still controlled the ground she was dancing on. And I had the perfect tools to make that point, one sprinkler head at a time. By mid-morning Saturday, my yard looked less like private property and more like a wedding brochure brought to life. Rows of ivory chairs had been arranged with military precision. Satin ribbons danced in the breeze. A gazebo-style arch, dripping in imported lilies, stood proudly at the edge of my koi pond, where my wind chime used to hang. Karen was everywhere. In heels too high for turf, she paced between vendors and guests, issuing commands with the breathless urgency of a director on opening night. I spotted her niece, the bride, in curlers and a satin robe, giggling near the porch that did not belong to her. The nerve. And still, no one asked permission. I stepped outside just as a DJ rolled a massive sound system across the lawn. "This isn't public land," I said flatly. He blinked, caught mid-lift. "We were told." "Yeah, I've heard that line." "Karen told you." "Karen doesn't own this property." Before he could respond, Karen materialized at the edge of the lawn like a specter in magenta. "James," she said, her smile too white, too wide. "You're up early. Isn't it a beautiful day?" "You're trespassing." Her laugh tinkled like glass. "Let's not be dramatic. This is for my niece's special day. The board approved the use of community-facing assets. It's in the bylaws, Article 6, Section C, remember?" I remembered. I'd read those bylaws front to back after her third complaint about my mailbox's curvature. The clause was vague, a bureaucratic net she'd cast wide to excuse her power plays. "My lawn isn't a community asset." "Well, that's a matter of interpretation," she said breezily, before gesturing to a florist who nodded and began weaving flowers into the wrought iron fence I installed with my own hands. "I never consented to this." Karen placed a hand on her chest. "James, no one's trying to hurt you. It's 1 afternoon. The guests will be gone by 6. I even made sure the tent company promised not to damage the grass. This isn't a compromise. It's a hijacking." Karen stepped closer. Her voice dropped an octave. "You want to be the grumpy old guy? Fine. But that won't go well for you. The board already approved this. If you interfere, you'll be in violation of HOA obstruction clauses. And we do fine for that." I stared at her. It wasn't just entitlement. It was audacity with teeth. That's when the plan crystallized. I said nothing, only nodded once and turned back toward my house. She thought it was surrender. I was giving her rope. Inside, I opened the app on my phone and pulled up my sprinkler system interface. 20 zones. 12 active heads. Programmable by area, pressure, duration. I could soak one patch of lawn or launch a coordinated assault. I called up Zone 7, the koi pond perimeter. Zone 9, the patio edge. Zones 11 through 14, the entire south lawn, now a makeshift chapel. Each nozzle had been buried with precision. Karen wouldn't have noticed them even if she looked. And thanks to my upgrades, they weren't your average Home Depot hoses. They were pressure-adjustable Rain Command 2000s. High enough to cover a wedding arch, silent enough not to alert a crowd. I scheduled a custom program. Operation Eviction. Start time, 11:59 a.m. Run time, 10 minutes. Pressure, maximum. Back outside, the guests began to arrive in pastel clusters. Women in wide-brimmed hats and heels sank into my soft soil. A man in a seersucker suit clinked a champagne glass against a rented violin. The harpist ran a scale that made the air shimmer. From behind my window, I watched it all unfold. The wedding planner cued the music. The bridesmaids lined up like dominoes. Karen gave me one final look, smug and victorious, as if she'd finally broken the neighborhood's wild card. I smiled, holding my phone like a detonator. Then I whispered, and the bride walked right into the splash zone. The first sprinkler fired at 11:59 a.m. sharp. It started with a soft hiss, almost imperceptible beneath the string quartet's polished rendition of Canon in D. Then, with a mechanical click, Zone 9 unleashed a focused geyser straight into the front row of satin-draped chairs. The spray arced with an elegance that belied its chaos, soaking hems, heels, and hairdos in one graceful sweep. For a full 2 seconds, no one moved. Then came the screams. A man in a lavender tie leapt to his feet, holding a soggy wedding program over his head. A woman in a backless gown shrieked as water plastered her curls to her scalp. The harpist stood, horrified, her instrument gurgling like a drowning cat. Karen spun around, mouth agape, eyes darting toward the sprinkler like she'd seen a ghost rise from the grass. I tapped the screen again. Zone 11 lit up next, 3 heads in synchronized sequence. The aisle, once a pristine white runner lined with flower petals, became a miniature canal. Water surged across the fabric, sweeping petals away like confetti in a storm drain. Then Zone 12 activated. The arch. The lilies, expensive and flown in from somewhere exotic, wilted under the assault. The white ribbons darkened, dripping as if mourning. And the bride, having just stepped onto the sodden runner, was blasted by a high-pressure jet to the side of her designer dress. The crowd was in full retreat now, tripping over each other as they fled the spray. Guests fumbled with chairs and clutched purses to their chests. The quartet gave up entirely, shielding their instruments with jackets and sprinting toward the catering tent like evacuees. From my front porch, I watched with arms crossed, the picture of serenity. Karen dashed toward the sprinkler heads like she might physically wrestle them into submission. "Shut it off," she shrieked. "James, shut this off right now." I descended the porch steps slowly, savoring the moment. "I told you not to hold a wedding in my yard," I said, voice calm. "This isn't a park. This isn't your venue. This is my home." "You've ruined everything," she gasped, soaked from head to toe. Her mascara had surrendered, trailing down her cheeks in streaks. I lifted my phone. This is just regular yard maintenance. My lawn needs water, Karen. You, of all people, should understand. Can't let the turf go dry, remember?" The bride, now crying, staggered under the dripping remains of the archway. The groom tried to shield her with his jacket, but it was too late. They looked like contestants from a slapstick game show, not a couple at the altar. "You'll be sued," Karen barked. "I'll call the board, the police." "They're already on their way," I replied. Because I had, of course, filed a trespass complaint the moment the first folding chair hit my lawn that morning. I'd emailed the HOA board a full photographic log of the setup. I'd even called my lawyer. "This is criminal trespassing," I said evenly. "I have you on voicemail admitting you knew. You authorized this without consent. That's not just HOA overreach, that's a felony." Karen paled, the color draining beneath the water streaming down her face. Across the street, flashing lights arrived. A squad car. The responding officer stepped out, looked around the chaos, and made a beeline for me. Officer Reyes, familiar face. We'd met during a neighborhood safety briefing. He glanced at my lawn, my phone, the wreck of the wedding. "You James Walker?" "Yes, sir." "And you didn't authorize this event?" "Not even remotely." He turned to Karen, who opened her mouth, but no sound came out. For once, words failed her. "I think we need to have a conversation," Reyes said, motioning her toward the sidewalk. As she stumbled past me, soaked and stunned, I leaned in close enough for only her to hear. "You chose the wrong lawn." Karen didn't reply, just blinked, mascara mingling with sprinkler water. Behind her, the guests began to scatter. Caterers unplugged equipment. The DJ yanked cords like a man fleeing a fire, and someone knocked over the cake, sending it face first into the wet grass. The ceremony was over before it began, and I hadn't even used Zone 14 yet. The aftermath looked like the wake of a suburban hurricane. Folding chairs overturned like casualties, half-eaten hors d'oeuvres soaked and sinking into the grass, and a champagne flute bobbing in the koi pond like a message in a bottle. Karen sat on the curb in silence, her once flawless blowout clinging to her face like seaweed. The bride had left in tears. The groom was last seen arguing with the wedding planner near a catering van stuck in my backyard mud. Officer Reyes spent 30 minutes interviewing neighbors, cataloging photos, and listening to my neatly curated voice memos. Every message Karen left me, every smug, self-incriminating word, was archived and time-stamped. "She told me to ignore your complaints," the florist later admitted. Said the board had signed off. I didn't even know this was someone's private yard. That made it easier for Reyes to file the initial trespass citation. But the real hammer came when he asked if I wanted to press charges. I didn't answer right away, because what I wanted wasn't just punishment. It was correction. Karen had ruled this neighborhood like a queen without a crown for nearly 4 years. She fined veterans for flags that fluttered an inch too far. She forced retirees to repaint shutters over shade mismatches only she could see. She banned wind chimes, banned bird feeders, banned sidewalk chalk. And now, she'd turned my yard into a wedding venue without permission. Yes, I wanted correction. Yes, I told Reyes. I want her held accountable. He nodded. We'll file it. By Monday, the entire neighborhood had seen the footage. Because I posted it. Not on my own accounts, of course. I sent the sprinkler-soaked chaos to a local neighborhood watch forum and let the internet do what it does best: devour hypocrisy. Karen, sopping and screaming in high definition, was less of a villain now and more of a cautionary tale. The board called an emergency meeting. This time, it wasn't held at the clubhouse Karen always controlled. It was held at the town library neutral ground. Half the neighborhood showed up, including Mr. Alvarez, whose vegetable garden Karen once cited for aggressive parsley growth. I stood and gave my account plainly. The HOA is not a monarchy. It's a system. And this system failed when one person manipulated it for personal gain. Karen tried to defend herself, talked about bylaws and interpretations, but the crowd wasn't buying it. Not after they saw footage of her sipping champagne in someone else's backyard while claiming it was community property. The board voted 6-1 to remove her from her position. The one vote against Karen. Her power evaporated like mist on a hot sidewalk. And me? I sent her an invoice. Detailed, bullet-pointed, professional. Labor charges for reseeding my lawn. Damage fees for the koi pond. Replacement cost for my wind chimes. Water utility charges for the sprinkler run. Total, $4,732.42. She refused to pay, of course. So I filed a small claims suit. 3 months later, I won. The judge didn't need much convincing, especially after I played the voice message where Karen said, "Just one afternoon, James. What's the worst that could happen?" She paid. Eventually. In installments. Each month, a check arrived in my mailbox, neatly written, begrudgingly signed, and always accompanied by a petty note. One read, "Hope the grass is green, you spiteful toad." I framed that one. The grass was, in fact, very green. In the end, I didn't just get my yard back. I got my neighborhood back. Karen's absence was like removing a splinter that had been festering for years. Without her micromanagement, neighbors painted their shutters in bold colors. Kids drew chalk masterpieces across driveways without fear. Someone even installed a tire swing. No one fined them. No one complained. And every time I stepped outside, I heard something I hadn't heard in months. Laughter. As for me, I upgraded the sprinkler system again. Just in case.